I was born in Tyler, Texas in 1939 at Mother Frances Hospital. I was a Thanksgiving baby and born on November the 28th. I grew up in Tyler. Shortly after I was born, my sister Ann was born several years later at Mother Frances Hospital also. I was active in the Cub Scouts and I was active in the Boy Scouts. I enjoyed both organizations and stayed with the Boy Scouts until I think when I was a junior in high school. I went all the way through the Tyler Public Schools from first grade through grade 12. I did throw newspapers while I was growing up and threw it for three to 4 years. And I enjoyed throwing newspapers too, through the Tyler Courier-Times. I learned a lot by having a newspaper route, learned how to get along with people. And my dad traveled. He was a traveling salesman. He was gone nearly every week from Monday till Friday. But on Sunday, he would help me by carrying me around on the hood of his car. And we had Studebakers that had a good flat hood, so that worked out really well. And it was dangerous. It was not the safest thing to do, but it was very helpful. And he got me home in time to get dressed and go to Sunday school and church. So we had a great time doing that together. My mother was a homemaker. She did work off and on as a secretary. My dad worked as a traveling salesman. He traveled through 3 states, and he sold women's ready-to-wear and also a children's line of clothes. My grandmother and granddad on my mother's side, they grew up for a number of years in Germany. And my grandfather was born in the Rhineland, and his parents brought him to the United States when he was about 13 years old. My grandmother, her family was from Stuttgart, Germany, and they, when they left, they came on the U.S. Maine and came across, and they came into New York Harbor, and so her family, she was about 12 years old when she was brought over, and they came through Ellis Island. On my dad's side, his family came out of North Carolina. Back in that day and time, they had what was called the orphan trains. And my granddad one day knew that the orphan train was coming from Brooklyn, so he went down to the train station, just messing around, and watched the kids unloaded off the orphan train. They would come out and stand on the platform. People would come and look at them and, I guess, talk to them, whatever. And if they wanted to adopt a child, then they went through whatever procedures were necessary to do that. My granddad saw this very pretty little young lady standing on the platform, and he went home, told my grandmother about it, and somehow then they were able to get in touch with this young lady. And they decided to adopt who became my Aunt Catherine. We called her, as kids, we called her Aunt Tatty. And so we had another member of the Matthews family who was actually a member of the orphan train. When I graduated from high school, I went to Tyler Junior College. So in the summers, I loaded Coke trucks, loaded and unloaded Coke trucks at the Coke plant. And that was a hard job, but it was a good job. Let me know I didn't want to necessarily do that all my life. Then I went to the University of Texas for 2 years. And one weekend, really, when I was home, a friend of mine called and said, "Irwin, how would you like to have a blind date?" Well, I wasn't with anybody at the time. I said, "Well, that'd be fine." And said, "Her name is Zelma Sue Mings." And I said, "Fine." So her family called her Susie, always called her Susie, so that's what I've always called her. And so we went together for about, over a year, really, and we decided that we would marry. So Susie was at North Texas State University. I was at the University of Texas, and she was a little ahead in her work, and I was a little behind her. So we decided we were going to marry before we graduated from college. One of us was going to have to move. So I decided, since I needed more hours, that I would transfer and go to North Texas. So she and I decided to marry. We did marry September the 1st, which was 1962. And I had gotten a job working with the Denton Independent School District to drive a school bus. And so we started our married life, and we went back to school. We only had a radio and a record player in the apartment, so we wanted to have a TV, but we didn't have a TV. So the 7-Eleven store rented TVs. So we would go on Friday to the 7-Eleven store. We would rent the TV, and we'd be able to watch TV till probably mid-afternoon on Sunday, and then we'd load it up, take it back to the 7-Eleven store. So we did have TV that way. An assistant superintendent of personnel named Charles Wages called Susie and said that he would like to offer her a job teaching first grade at Bel Air Elementary School. Well, she graduated on Sunday, and she reported to work at Bel Air Elementary School on Monday morning, teaching first grade, never having done anything but her junior student teaching and her regular student teaching at North Texas. And I finished my work in August of 1963, and I graduated with my BS degree in education. And Mr. Wages called me from Hurst Euless Bedford. He said, "Mr. Matthews, I have a 7th grade Texas history job at Hurst Junior High." When we came, there was nothing. I mean, it was a tiny, tiny town. Hurst was very tiny. And there was not very much on 183. 183 was where the city of Hurst was. What is Highway 10 now? Yeah, back in the old times, it was 183. The Bell helicopter plant was the big thing. That's where a lot of people worked and lived that lived in the city of Hurst. On 183, there was the VFW building. And it was not the VFW building then, because that was the post office. And Bill Souter was the postmaster of the Hurst post office. Across the street was a Piggly Wiggly store. Next to it, as I remember, was an M.E. Moses, 5 and dime. And then if you looked down 183 to the east, there was Brazil's Cleaners, as I remember. There was the radiator shop that's still there today. And then there was First Baptist Church of Hurst. And across the street from that was the fire station. And that was pretty well it at that point. Now, the city offices, I think, were over on Mary Drive. We bought our first home in 1966. John Barfield was building homes down in a new neighborhood around Donna Park Elementary School, which was a pretty new elementary school. And we've lived there ever since. We've lived there 52 years, I would say. We'd had a good first year of teaching. Gene Stimmel was my first principal, and he was my principal for the first couple of years. And A.J. Sales became the principal at Hurst Junior High the last couple of years I was there. So in the second year, I became active in the HEB Classroom Teacher Association. And I became president of that association by about 1967. And during that time, working in the professional association that I was in, teachers were concerned about having more say into their work. They wanted to have a say on salaries. They wanted to have a say on class size. They wanted to have a say on curriculum, on textbook choice, on lots of things. And so we were working on something called a professional consultation agreement, which would allow teachers and principals, everybody that sit down together with the superintendent. At that time, it was Newell Odell, and the school board, and talk about things that were of interest to all parties. Not that we would have any decision-making authority at all, but it would allow us to be heard, to give our input about things. We all worked together to develop this professional consultation agreement. And in 1968, the school board, we presented it to everyone, principals, everybody. The school board decided that they would pass the professional consultation agreement. So to me, that's one of the first milestones, I think, in my career. I think we developed some good things from that, and some of the remnants of it are still in existence today. One thing that came from that was the development of a sick leave policy. We didn't have a sick leave policy at first when we first came, and we developed I thought an excellent sick leave policy. So, and we all profited from that over the years that we were here. In 1968, a couple of other important things happened, plus the development of the consultation agreement. In that year, I was selected by the Hearst faculty to be Teacher of the Year. That was another milestone for me. And also, the kids that year dedicated the Hearst Annual to me. So those were very important things to me, and things to me that I was very appreciative of. Before we started school the next fall, there was an opening at Bell High School. Well, Don called me the first part of the summer, right after I'd been appointed vice principal at Central Junior High, and said, "Irwin, how would you like to be my vice principal at Hearst?" Well, since I'd started at Hearst, I'd been at Hearst for a fair number of years. I loved the people at Hearst, the kids, teachers. I was very excited about getting that opportunity. I said, yes, I would love to be the vice principal at Hearst. So I moved over to Hearst. Don Brown and I worked together very well, and we had 2 real good years at Hearst Junior High. Hearst was beginning to move to the north, and Bedford was beginning to grow. Euless was beginning to grow. So the district decided they were going to have a 4th junior high. So they began to build Bedford Junior High. Well, Bedford Junior High was being billed as a very innovative junior high school. I was chosen to go to Bedford Junior High School. So in 1970, we set out to begin our new life at Bedford Junior High School. It had 2 large patios. One on the west, one on the east. And the patios had open roofs. We had a lot of overhangs inside the building, so students were protected and moving from class to class, building to building. But there were no hallways, which gave you a feeling of freedom of movement inside the building. In the classroom areas were built as pods. Each pod had 8 classrooms with a big area in the middle where in the beginning the lockers were for that pod. So on the right side you would have 4 classrooms with a movable wall. That was another thing that was brand new about Bedford, and that allowed for large group instruction. On the other side of the wing was 4 more classrooms. Also, no doors were on the classrooms. That was brand new. No doors were on the classrooms. So the building had a lot of new features that the older schools did not have. There was a little glitch in things at the beginning of Bedford. Mr. Wages called me and said, "Mr. Matthews, Bedford is not going to be able to open on time. We're going to have to go half day. Central will go half a day. Bedford's going to come in here and go half a day. Everything's going to have to be shared." Central went to school in the morning. They started school early. The buses ran, brought the kids to Central. At 12 noon, they left. And at 1 o'clock, here came the buses bringing the Bedford kids in. And we went to school from 1 o'clock until 6 o'clock. Now, Bedford was to use a new formatted instruction. And so we were going to work with a individualized instruction format. Back in the old way of instruction, in reading, everybody was going to get the same instruction. Didn't matter whether they were on the 4th grade level or the 8th grade level. It was shoot to the middle. During that time, the TEA, Texas Education Agency, was developing what they called an individualized demonstration network. And we applied. The district applied, wanted us to apply to be a part of that network. Well, that was the next big thing for Bedford Junior High because it really launched us. The TEA came, they looked at our program, they said, this is a program we want to include. We want school districts to be able to come in, look at what they're doing. We want, not only in the state of Texas, but outside the state of Texas. And so when we were allowed to be a part of that network, it really launched individualized instruction at Bedford forward. I stayed at Bedford Junior High School then opened Bedford Junior High School in 1970, and I stayed there until I retired in 2002, 32 years. Bedford received a lot of nice honors. Bedford itself was chosen to be recognized with a Governor's School of Excellence Award 2 different times. They have the Blue Ribbon schools, they were called. Well, the state did give us the Blue Ribbon Award, which we were very, very proud of. One year, we had 500 PTA members. And that year, the state honored our PTA with a special award because it was unusual sometimes for a junior high school to get that many PTA members. But we did have 500 PTA members. But I never regretted that. I always involved my PTA in decision making. I will say too that later in the 1980s, I was given a national award, national life membership in PTA. And at the end of my career, they gave me a brick in recognition of my service, and that brick is in the Garden of Remembrance, I think they call it, in Austin at the state PTA buildings. All this time, my wife, she taught 29 years total. Well, my passion, I think, has been to be the very best educator that I could be. When I went to Bedford Junior High School, I said, my goal is to develop the best junior high school in this community for the people who send their kids here. And I really think that I did accomplish that. School should be a place not only for learning, which it has to be and must be, but it needs to be a place where we have some fun too. And we did have fun at Bedford. With the patio, we waxed the patio to some extent. We used a sealer, we called it, on the patio, which could make it slick, especially if it got wet. Well, that day the student council sponsor said, okay, we're going to have bowling on the patio. So they got bowling pins, set them up, and they went to the grocery store and they got a frozen chicken and brought it to school. And so the bowling ball was the frozen chicken. So we had frozen chicken bowling. Oh, the kids got they just loved that. In the science department, they built catapults. And then they had competitions to see, how these catapults worked and what they could hit with the catapults and all that. Well, the culminating activity was to go to medieval times. So I paid to send the whole 9th grade class to medieval times. So I went to medieval time on more than a few occasions. Pep rallies, I loved pep rallies. We had great fun at pep rallies. One day we were taking up football or taking up basketball tickets and money, and when we would finish, we would put the tickets in the box and the money from the tickets in the box, and I would take it up to the office and turn it in. So instead of putting it in the vault, she dropped it in her wastebasket that was under her desk. And that day, we had a substitute custodian that came through and cleaned the office in the evening. Well, the substitute custodian, if we'd had the regular one, it would never happen. But the substitute looked it under her desk, saw this stuff in there, and dumped that trash can that had that locked money bag in it with the money from the basketball game. So we called the dump, went to the dump, and found the bag. They went through all of these plastic bags, and they actually found that money bag. Well, here they came back to school. Well, needless to say, their odor was not very good. So we said, we were thrilled. The secretary was elated that they had found the money bag. I used to make a lot of announcements at Bedford. In fact, when they retired, Benny Hickerson, who was my vice principal at the time, they were going to change the PA out. It hadn't been changed out since the school was built. So here maintenance came in to get the PA, and she just happened to think, she said, that we need to preserve that microphone, because no telling how many announcements Mr. Matthews made over that PA. So when I retired, the faculty got a big kick out of this. They had mounted it on a piece of wood and put on there, "Hey Broncos," and gave me that microphone, one of my prized possessions. In 2000, I received the Hearst Citizen of the Year Award, which I was very proud of, and that was in the category of service. And I felt very honored by that. In 2007, I was inducted into the HEB Hall of Fame. And that was a huge honor for me in the category of distinguished employee. We joined First Baptist, and we really were not members very long. Susie reminded me the other day, I think it was 1 week, before they came to us and said, "Would y'all be willing to teach Sunday school? 4-year-olds. Well, we ended up teaching preschool Sunday school for 25 years. You know, Hearst has had so many great people. Bill Souter, of course, had a huge impact on the community. Bob Hampton had a big impact on the community. John Barfield, of course, who built hundreds of homes here. Herman Smith, who did the same thing. Pat May, she'd be considered a mentor to Susie and I. She's a big mentor of Susie's. Pat May, one of the great educators in this community. Pat May Center named for her. She was great. Lenny Jo Blair, another dynamic educator, teacher, principal, school board member, was president of the school board at one time. The Blair Room in the Pat May Center is named for her. You couldn't say enough about the influence of both of those women in this school district. Bobby Singleton, who became my vice principal at Bedford Junior High, and Shirley Green, who became my vice principal. Actually, at first she was a dean of women. We worked together for 20 years, which I think is very significant. That just doesn't happen that often. Charles Wages, to Susie and I, was one of our major mentors also. At the time when he hired us, he was the assistant superintendent of personnel. But after that position, Charles Wages then became the superintendent of Hearst Euless Bedford, and he was the superintendent of schools that hired me to go to Bedford Junior High School. Charles Wages really cared about students, cared about the community, and developed that caring attitude for students and parents as long as he was superintendent of HEB. So I think a lot of people will say that the great school district that HEB became because of the foundation that Charles Wages laid. We adopted two boys, and we adopted David in 1968. He was a baby. I think maybe he was 6 weeks old when we adopted David. And then in 1971, we adopted our second little boy, and he was a little bit older when we adopted him. I think he was 14 months old when Kevin came to live with us. So we had a great family. We had a lot of fun, did a lot of things. We could not have asked for two finer sons. They were both great. David graduated from LD Bell, and Kevin graduated from LD Bell. Hearst had great things all the way through. They had great parks. They had swimming places. They had activities, which they have more now, but they had a lot of activities for kids to be a part of. Now, not everything was in Hearst, but our boys in the early going, we worked with Scotty Morrison over at the Northeast YMCA. They were both in Indian Guides, and we had great times in Indian Guides. I was a T-ball coach at the YMCA, and we had great fun doing that. So the community was just a wholesome community to grow up in, family-oriented community, and the values in the community were our values we believed in, and I think a big credit goes to the city councils and the cities that they work to develop a quality atmosphere in the city. So we could not have raised our children in a finer community than the city of Hearst. And our boys loved being here. David, when he was a junior at the University of North Texas, became ill, and he died at the end of his junior year at North Texas. Kevin, on the other hand, went on through North Texas. He graduated from University of North Texas in 1997. We've had good times and we've had challenging times. And the support and the compassion in this city is great. Maybe it's other places, it very well may be, but we know it's here. And so that's one of the big reasons why we have stayed here. There's just not, even in the Metroplex, in my opinion, there's not a better city to live in. If you want to find a great city and a great school district, you ought to come to the city of Hearst and the HEB School District, because you're not going to find anything better than is right here. That's it.